Hey, Stewart's Chapel, Don Pierson and Don Counts, or the Double D, as my wife reminds me of every now and then. I think it was Brett Harris that started that, but either way, I kind of like it. The Double D's, the Double Dons. Anyway, this is Thursday's devotion, and we're continuing our conversation, at least with myself. This has been very good for me to remind myself of some of the reasons why I do what I do in relationship to lost people. And so the conversation is about Christians and lost people. This is Thursday. We're a week into it. So if you need to catch up, you'll need to go back to last Thursday to do so. So today I want to talk about, in relationship to me and lost people, I must know myself. You must know yourself. I must know myself. Look at Romans chapter 12, verse 13. Romans 12, verse 3. Romans 12, verse 3. For I say, through the grace given to me, everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. He's talking about spiritual gifts, but what a beautiful reminder to us and to me. You see, remember how we started a week ago Thursday about Jesus warning about the leaven or the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and how in Luke chapter 12 verse 1 he said that was their hypocrisy, and the hypocrisy was the result of their pride and self-righteousness, by thinking that they could create a righteousness of their own. They thought more of themselves than they ought. And in this passage, this is a passage to believers, where we are warned not to think more of ourselves than we ought, which means I need to really know myself. I need to remember that I too was lost. I need to remember that. I need to remember not only was I lost, but God brought a believer into my life. I need to remember that believer was bold. I need to remember that believer loved me. That believer loved the Lord. That believer kept a pure and holy life. That believer went the extra mile to be salt and light in my life. That believer constantly influenced my life. Now, the truth is, there were other believers in my life that did the same thing. I need to know that I too was once lost and have been found. But I also need to remember what God is doing in my life now, and that it is not a work of my own. I need to be aware of my own weaknesses. Parents, you already do that, right? You know the weaknesses of your children. You probably know the weaknesses of your families, and you probably even know your family's sins and generational sin, and you know where you're weak. You need to know your own weaknesses. Don't put yourself in a situation where you will be tempted knowingly, or where your weaknesses would be where you would fall. For example, if you are an alcoholic or a recovering alcoholic, you probably don't need to spend any time witnessing in bars or going out with lost people where there's a lot of drinking. That's not going to probably be to your benefit. Know your weaknesses. Know your strengths. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12 gives us another truth. Therefore, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. Therefore, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. I think that the reminder there for me is to remember that I'm not as strong as I think I am. And when dealing with lost people and entering into a relationship, remember, lost people, they do lost things. They act lost because they're lost. Just like you did when you were lost. You did lost things. Understand and be aware of that. You're probably not as strong as you think you are. You need to remember, you need to know when to flee, when to leave, and when to stay. So today, as you think about your relationship as a believer with lost people, you better know yourself. Don't think more highly of yourself, and don't think that because you're standing you won't fall. Take some steps of protection, or lest you fall. Love you, Stewart's Chapel.